Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take these massive, complex stacks of information and really try to distill them down to the essential, fascinating, and sometimes pretty shocking truths you need to know.
Today, we are absolutely undertaking a deep dive into a life that has been, I think, universally celebrated, but, rarely understood in its full complexity. We're talking about the extraordinary trajectory of Sally Ride.
Right. For most people, that name is just forever linked to one single monumental historical footnote, the first American woman in space.
And look, that fact, achieved on June 18, 1983, is absolutely monumental. You can't take that away. But we're here today because the sources, they just reveal a story that is so much richer, more complex, and frankly, more intellectually challenging than that single title suggests.
Yeah, our mission today is really to move beyond that flashbulb moment on the launch pad.
We're talking about Sally Kristen Ride, born in L.A. in 1951. She was a woman who joined NASA in 1978 and just, shattered that American glass ceiling right into orbit.
But the real story, the real deep dive here, it focuses on the depth of her intellectual life, her, frankly, surprising athletic rigor, her critical and intensely private role in maintaining NASA's integrity during its darkest years.
And the profound personal identity that she protected right up until her death.
So let's start with some of the hard facts that immediately distinguish her.
Yes.
Okay, first American woman, huge milestone. But she was only the third woman globally.
That's a point that gets lost a lot. She followed two Soviet cosmonauts, Valentina Tereshkova all the way back in 1963, and then Svetlana Savitskaya in 1982. The American narrative kind of tends to forget that 20-year gap between Tereshkova and Ride.
Right. And what often gets buried under the weight of that first title is that when she flew on the Space Shuttle Challenger, she was only 32 years old.
Which made her, at that moment, the youngest American astronaut who had ever flown in space. And that just speaks volumes about her rapid ascent and the immense trust NASA had to have placed in her technical ability.
And when you look at the source material we have, you realize her professional makeup was just. It was completely unique. We're studying a woman who simultaneously excelled in the super cerebral world of theoretical physics, earning a PhD from Stanford.
And the intensely physical, competitive world of elite sports, she was on the verge of turning professional in tennis. Who does that?
Exactly. That versatility, the ability to be a world-class athlete and a world-class astrophysicist, that is the key to understanding her resilience.
Absolutely. We're going to explore how that unexpected foundation prepared her not just for spaceflight, but for navigating the high-stakes political and cultural pressure she faced, and then the lasting legacy she built through decades of devotion to science policy and education.
Okay, let's unpack this unusual foundational period. Let's start in Los Angeles. She grew up in a really supportive, academically engaged environment, primarily in the Encino and Van Nuys neighborhoods of the city.
Her family dynamic is so crucial here. Her parents, Dale and Carol Joyce Ride, were both elders in the Presbyterian Church, but their lives were really defined by public service and this deep intellectual curiosity, not just faith.
Right. Her father, Dale, he was a political science professor at Santa Monica College.
Yeah.
So that means she was raised in a household where, political discourse and civic understanding were just part of dinner conversation.
And her mother, Carol Joyce, was a volunteer counselor at a women's correctional facility, which just underscores this commitment to social impact, to helping others.
So it's not just an academically supportive environment. It was an environment where public service, critical thinking, and, a sense of social justice were modeled every single day.
Exactly. And she had one sibling, a younger sister, Karen, who went by the nickname Bear. That core value system of using your intellect for the public good, that's something we see reflected decades later in all of her policy work.
But the primary narrative of her early life is almost completely dominated by tennis. Professional level tennis. This wasn't just a sport for her. It was an identity that shaped her discipline and her competitive drive. Where did this all begin?
It started when she was 9. Her family spent a year traveling through Europe, and she discovered the game in Spain. And by age 10, when they were back in California, she was so serious about it, she was being coached by a legend of the sport, Alice Marble, a former world #1 player.
A world #1.
Yeah.
At age 10, that just highlights the intensity right there.
Oh, yeah. By 1963, she was ranked number 20 in Southern California for girls 12 and under. That is a massively competitive pool. It indicates she had already dedicated thousands of hours to the craft.
And she even attended the prestigious Westlake School for Girls in L.A. on a tennis scholarship, which shows that the sport was already dictating her academic path.
And this talent, It initially led her far from California. In 1968, she enrolled at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania on a full scholarship.
And while she was there, she didn't just play tennis. She made the field hockey varsity team and even played golf. I mean, this just shows an astonishing level of general athletic ability.
Her tennis performance at Swarthmore was just dominant. She won all 6 of her intercollegiate matches, and most significantly, she became the Eastern Intercollegiate Women's Singles Champion.
But the path to the pros, that was a harsh reality check, wasn't it?
It was. She defended that title in May 1969, won it easily, but she recognized that the college infrastructure back then, especially before Title IX, really reshaped women's sports. It just couldn't support her aspirations for the professional tour.
How so?
Well, Swarthmore had outdoor courts, but no indoor ones, so year-round, intensive practice, it was impossible.
So this pivot point, moving from this near-professional sports career back to academics, it shows incredible mental clarity and an ability to analyze her own potential with, like, brutal honesty.
She returned to California in January 1970 with the explicit goal of becoming a professional player. She even enrolled briefly at UCLA.
And she was taking Shakespeare and quantum mechanics courses there, and getting A's in both, by the way, while she was trying to break into the professional circuit.
But she calculated the cost. I mean, literally. She played 3 exhausting matches in a single August morning, and the body ache that resulted just made her realize what the next level required. 8 hours of focused practice a day in, day out.
And she concluded, and the sources really stress this, that she did not have what it took, which is a statement of failure, right? It's a statement of calculated choice.
Exactly. She looked at the required commitment to be the best in that field and decided to channel that discipline into a different mountain to climb, academics. It's a powerful lesson in resource allocation.
And that new mountain was Stanford University.
And interestingly, the dean of admissions who approved her transfer, Fred Hargadon, was the exact same person who had interviewed her for Swarthmore years earlier. A small but, powerful connection that probably eased her transition back into that high-caliber academic setting.
Her academic output at Stanford, this really cemented her status as a polymath. In 1973, she earned 2 bachelor's degrees simultaneously, a Bachelor of Science in Physics and a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature.
A physicist who could analyze the structural complexity of a free electron laser while simultaneously grappling with the narrative complexity of Shakespeare. I mean, come on.
That duality, right? The technical precision combined with this deep capacity for communication and humanistic understanding that is absolutely critical to her future success at NASA.
It's a place that requires technical excellence, but also this incredible communication prowess with the public, with politicians.
But she wasn't satisfied with 2 bachelor's degrees. She channeled that relentless focus she'd used on the tennis court entirely into physics. She earned a Master of Science in 1975, and then critically, the Doctor of Philosophy, the PhD, in 1978.
And we really need to pause on the rigor of this scientific research because this part often gets sidelined by the astronaut narrative. It makes it sound like she just had some generic science degree. Her specialty was advanced astrophysics and the then emerging field of free electron lasers.
So what was her dissertation on? The source material gives us specifics, right?
It does. Her doctoral dissertation, written under the supervision of Arthur B.C. Walker Jr., focused specifically on the interaction of X-rays with the interstellar medium.
Okay, so that is serious, high-level theoretical physics. It's pure, fundamental science analyzing how high-energy photons interact with the vast, diffuse material between stars.
Right. It sets her apart immediately from the test pilots and the military officers who typically populated the astronaut corps. Her technical expertise wasn't in operational aerospace. It was in the deepest theoretical workings of the cosmos itself. That technical grounding provided this indispensable layer of credibility when she later became a mission specialist.
And before we jump into the NASA recruitment that radically changed her life, the sources give us a brief but important look into her pre-NASA personal life during these demanding academic years. And this really sets up the crucial context for later.
Yes. During this time, the sources know she lived with a fellow graduate physics student, Bill Coulson, after ending a relationship with another partner, John Tompkins.
But more importantly, and this is relevant to her later life, the source material explicitly mentions her close relationship during her Stanford years with Molly Tyson, who was her tennis doubles partner.
And the source identifies Tyson as Ride's then-girlfriend. Although that relationship ended in 1975, the fact that these relationships existed and were part of her life during this formative period, while she was actively applying to the most public, most scrutinized job in the world, it just foreshadows the deep sense of privacy she would maintain for the rest of her career.
Okay, so we have this exceptionally accomplished individual, a PhD in astrophysics, an elite athlete, a nuanced academic, living a guarded but full life. What was the exact moment, the catalyst, that took her from the theoretical physics lab bench to the launch pad?
The catalyst was remarkably specific and almost low-key. It was an article she saw in January 1977 on the front page of the Stanford Daily.
Her student newspaper.
Student newspaper. It was a clear, concise announcement. NASA was recruiting a new group of astronauts for the upcoming Space Shuttle program, and for the first time in American history, they were actively seeking women candidates.
The response to this open call must have been massive.
It was unprecedented. She mailed a request, got the application forms, and submitted her materials. And when NASA asked for 3 people who knew her qualifications, she listed the 3 peers she had been in relationships with: Bill Coulson, John Tompkins, and Molly Tyson. She trusted their professional and personal assessment of her character.
And NASA received, what was the number?
An absolutely overwhelming 8,079 applications by the deadline. Yeah, to put that in perspective, that's thousands of people vying for fewer than 40 slots. She was among the 208 finalists invited to the Johnson Space Center in Houston for these grueling extended interviews and medical exams.
And her physical fitness, honed by years of elite tennis training, that must have immediately impressed the doctors.
It did. But the scrutiny she faced during these interviews was intense and often openly and just, frankly, shockingly sexist. It was reflective of the deeply conservative, male-dominated institution she was trying to enter.
They asked some pretty invasive questions, didn't they?
Deeply inappropriate. She was asked if the flight would affect her reproductive organs, a concern they certainly weren't raising with the male candidates. And perhaps most famously, she was asked if she would weep when things inevitably went wrong or got stressful on the job.
How did she even respond to that?
Her response became legendary. It was a model of professional deflection. She simply insisted that she saw herself in only one way, as an astronaut. She just refused to engage with the gendered expectations being forced on her.
And it worked. She was selected in January 1978 as one of 35 astronaut candidates, known officially as NASA Astronaut Group 8.
And crucially, this group included 6 women, which was a revolutionary number for the agency at the time.
And we have a great anecdote that immediately conveys the culture she was stepping into. The group's official public name was politely referred to as 35 New Guys, but internally.
Internally, they called themselves TFNG, which that acronym was known within the military community to stand for the fucking new guy, a decidedly irreverent and exclusive military phrase for newcomers to a unit.
That nickname tells you everything about the intense, insular, and often aggressive culture she was navigating. It was military-heavy, deeply traditional, and she had to earn respect in that environment, not just as a woman, but as a civilian PhD among a bunch of fighter pilots.
And the training itself was immensely rigorous. It included flying the T-38 Talon jet. Now, mission specialists, which was her track, were technically only required to ride in the back seat.
Right, just to handle an emergency if the pilot was incapacitated.
Exactly. They certainly weren't supposed to fly lower than the 5,000 feet limit established for training, but proficient candidates, including Ride, they pushed those boundaries.
I read one colleague, John Fabian, reportedly had her fly under the hood.
That's right, which means using instruments only, windows blacked out. And that requires exceptional focus, precision, and trust in your instruments. She thrived in this environment.
She enjoyed flying so much that she took private lessons, earned a private pilot's license, and even bought a part interest in a Grumman Tiger aircraft that she used for weekend trips.
So by August 1979, she was no longer a candidate, she was an official NASA astronaut.
And before her first trip to space, she gained absolutely critical operational experience on the ground. She served as the ground-based capsule communicator, or CAPCOM, for the second and third Space Shuttle flights.
And this is a huge role. The CAPCOM is the person who is the voice of mission control, talking directly to the crew in orbit, and she was the first woman ever to hold that pivotal role.
That experience is essential. It gives her this deep insight into mission operations, protocol, crisis management, all from the perspective of the ground team.
She also used her technical expertise to help develop the Shuttle Remote Manipulator System, the RMS, which is known as the Canadarm. This is a massive, complex robotic arm used for handling payloads in space.
So her skill with the robotic arm, combined with her stellar performance as Capcom, made her an undeniable choice for a mission specialist role, even if there was some internal resistance from high-level NASA management who were, let's say, uncomfortable with the changing demographics of the Corps.
Definitely. Her selection for STS-7 aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger was officially announced in April 1982. And this is when the intensity of the world's scrutiny truly landed. She became an instant global celebrity.
And her immediate response was just to minimize the personal spectacle.
She declined over 500 private interview requests before the launch press conference. She understood that if she engaged the celebrity machine, it would immediately undermine her professional status. She wanted the story to be about the mission, not about her being a woman.
But the media, and even NASA's own engineers, they just couldn't get past the gender factor. This led to those infamous and almost comical examples of ingrained sexism.
Right, like the engineers asking her to help them develop a space makeup kit. The underlying assumption being that female astronauts would, prioritize vanity in orbit.
And then there's the legendary example that still shocks people. For the 6-day mission, they suggested providing her with a supply of 100 tampons.
100 tampons for 6 days. The utter lack of understanding about basic human biology, even among NASA's technical staff, it just underscores how unprepared the agency was for female astronauts.
So the launch finally happens on June 18, 1983. The energy surrounding the event was palpable, captured perfectly by fans wearing T-shirts bearing the lyrics, "Ride, Sally, Ride."
And on that day, she secured her historical status as the first American woman and the youngest American in space.
And the mission itself, STS-7, was far from ceremonial. It was highly complex technologically. The main objectives involved deploying 2 communication satellites, Annex C2 for Canada and Palapu B1 for Indonesia.
And the first ever deployment of the shuttle pallet satellite, SPAS-1.
And her specific role placed her right at the center of this technical activity. She operated the robotic arm, the RMS, to both deploy and then, crucially, retrieve SEPI-S1. This was the first time that deployment and retrieval of a complex scientific payload had been executed from the shuttle.
And she demonstrated a technical flair beyond the handbook. She manipulated the arm into the shape of a 7 for a photograph taken by SPAS-1 as it flew free, which marked the first time the orbiter was captured photographically in orbit.
So she wasn't just following instructions, she was innovating how the equipment could be used for mission objectives and even for public relations.
Exactly. She also demonstrated remarkable physical robustness. Unlike many rookie astronauts, she wasn't affected by space adaptation syndrome, that acute nausea that's often experienced when the body adjusts to microgravity. The mission lasted over 6 days.
Post-flight, the celebrity machine finally caught up with her, but she navigated it carefully. She met with President Reagan, famously presenting him with jelly beans that had flown on the mission.
She also testified before Congress about the efficacy and reliability of the robotic arm, lending her technical credibility to the program's future.
And what's fascinating here is her proactive connection to international space history. In September 1983, she took the initiative to meet Svetlana Savitskaya, the second woman in space, just one spot ahead of her, in Budapest.
The sources describe an instant camaraderie between the 2 pioneers. They spent 6 hours conversing, exchanging mementos. Despite the Cold War context and the historical tension between the 2 nations' space programs, Wright immediately recognized the shared boundary-breaking experience they both held.
And she was back in the rotation quickly. Her second spaceflight, STS-41G, launched in October 1984, again aboard Challenger. This made her the first American woman to fly twice, cementing her status as a career astronaut, not just a symbol.
And this mission achieved another significant milestone for women in space. It was the first time 2 women were in space together, with Catherine Sullivan on board as a fellow mission specialist.
And Sullivan also used this flight to become the first American woman to perform an extravehicular activity, an EVA, a spacewalk.
As a veteran astronaut now, Ride performed flawlessly. We know from the sources that unlike the rookies on that flight who moved about cautiously to avoid space adaptation syndrome, Ride immediately and gracefully began moving about, completely unaffected by the transition to weightlessness. She was clearly a master of the environment.
And the second flight delivered the perfect anecdote for her technical agility and ability to innovate under pressure, when the huge shuttle imaging radar antenna, the SIR-B, failed to unfold correctly.
Threatening a major objective of the mission, she stepped in. Instead of following standard procedure, she skillfully used the robot arm, the RMS, to gently shake the antenna loose. She manipulated the arm faster and with more finesse than she had ever been trained to.
And when the antenna latches failed to close later, she was again the one who used the RMS to nudge the antenna panel shut. This wasn't a scripted maneuver. This was skillful, veteran, real-time technical problem solving. It demonstrated her indispensable value to the crew.
She also carried a memento that provided this beautiful narrative link between aviation pioneers, a white silk scarf previously worn by Amelia Earhart. This gesture connects her achievement directly to the lineage of female boundary breakers who preceded her.
After her 2 flights, Ride had spent a total of over 343 hours in space. She was a proven flight veteran, a technical operator, a respected Capcom. But as we move into the next phase of her career, we find that her greatest contribution will be made not from the operational cockpit,
but in the political and investigative rooms of power.
Okay, this is the dramatic pivot point of her story, where the celebrated pioneer transforms into the indispensable investigator and policy shaper.
She was actively training for her third mission, STS-61I, which was later switched to STS-61M, both scheduled for 1986. But the pressures of 1985 were already immense, both professionally and personally.
Right. Her marriage to fellow astronaut Stephen Hawley, whom she had married in 1982, was under severe strain.
And she was still performing the required public-facing role of an astronaut spouse for Hawley's STS-61C flight in January 1986. But sources confirm her life was already moving in a different, intensely private direction. She had secretly begun an affair with Tam O'Shaughnessy, her former junior tennis circuit friend who was living in Atlanta at the time.
Then, just weeks later, everything changed. The planned missions were all canceled. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger disintegrated shortly after launch.
That tragedy completely derailed her flying career and forced her into this new, incredibly high-stakes role.
Ride was immediately appointed to the Presidential Commission investigating the disaster, famously known as the Rogers Commission. And her role was not just important. It was fundamentally unique and critical to the investigation's integrity.
Because she was the only person on the commission who was a current NASA employee, and the only space shuttle astronaut on the committee. This meant she knew the institutional culture, the operational pressures, and the human cost of failure better than anyone else at that table.
And here's the absolute hinge moment of her professional integrity. We know from the source material that she discreetly provided Major General Donald J. Kutaina with the single most critical piece of evidence regarding the technical cause of the disaster.
Wait, so she was a current NASA employee actively training, immersed in the institution, and she risked her entire career and her standing within the agency to pass on that single critical piece of evidence.
She did. She provided the discreet, highly sensitive information regarding the O-rings becoming dangerously stiff at low temperatures.
Which was the cause.
That was the core engineering defect that led to the breach and the subsequent explosion. This detail was known within certain engineering circles at NASA and Morton Thiokol, but it had been politically suppressed.
So this revelation had to be handled with extreme delicacy to protect her as the source, given the massive political fallout that was certain to occur.
Exactly. That critical information was then credited publicly to the physicist Richard Feynman, who famously demonstrated the O-ring failure using a simple glass of ice water during the public hearings.
That move crediting Feynman was the political shield. It protected Ride from being identified as the primary internal whistleblower, allowing her to keep her job and her credibility while ensuring the truth about NASA's catastrophic management failure came to light. It demonstrates immense personal and professional integrity.
She was deeply disturbed, even haunted, by the revelations that came out of the commission about NASA's dysfunctional management and broken risk assessment processes.
Specifically, how the agency ignored repeated warnings from engineers about the O-ring problem.
And she didn't just investigate the failure. She openly supported those who tried to warn the agency. Roger Boisjoly, the engineer who had specifically warned of the O-ring problems, was being professionally shunned and ostracized by his employer, Morton Thiokol.
And Ride made a very public statement of support by publicly hugging Boisjoly, showing solidarity for his efforts and his courage in speaking the truth to power. This was a direct rebuke to the toxic corporate culture that penalized honesty.
So, following the Rogers Commission report, which was submitted in June 1986, Ride was assigned to a new role at NASA headquarters, leading the agency's first formal strategic planning effort. This cemented her transition from pilot to policy expert.
This resulted in her authorship of the landmark report, NASA Leadership and America's Future in Space. And what's fascinating about this document is the political controversy. NASA management actively disliked it.
Why the fiction?
Because Ride, being pragmatic and scientifically sound, prioritized Earth exploration and scientific observation over the then politically charged mission to Mars. She argued that short-term, achievable goals that benefited humanity directly were a better use of resources than a massive, politically driven Mars endeavor. She refused to let political aspiration dictate sound strategy.
She briefly founded and headed NASA's Office of Exploration, but the institutional resistance and the dysfunctional atmosphere she had witnessed during the commission clearly pushed her toward academia.
In May 1987, she announced she was leaving the agency to accept a 2-year fellowship at Stanford University's Center for International Security and Arms Control, or CISAC. She divorced Hawley that June.
The move to CISAC was an intense, high-level pivot to policy. Her research focused on means by which nuclear warheads could be counted and verified from space, placing her at the nexus of astrophysics, engineering, and international security policy.
She was working alongside major policy players, including a future Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. The fact that she was researching arms control issues from a technical perspective underscores that unique blend of physics and political science that was present from her family upbringing.
But professional life at Stanford, despite her immense professional credentials, wasn't smooth. Sidney Drell, who had recruited her, attempted repeatedly to secure her a permanent professorship, but no department, either physics or policy, would appoint her.
That is shocking. A physics PhD from Stanford, a 2-time veteran astronaut, the only person to sit on the Challenger Commission, a presidential advisor, and she was denied a professorship to the point where her recruiter quit in protest.
What were the sources suggesting was the underlying cause? Was this lingering prejudice against a female pioneer, or was it institutional resistance to her hybrid focus, which wasn't pure physics?
It seems to have been a combination of factors, primarily institutional resistance to her policy focus. Academia, especially in hard sciences, often struggles to categorize and reward individuals whose work bridges deep theory and high-level applied policy. They viewed her as either too much a policy person or not active enough in pure physics.
Drell's protest resignation just speaks volumes about the level of institutional denial she faced, even after breaking so many barriers.
Regardless of the institutional slight, she soon found a long-term academic and leadership home. In July 1989, she became a professor of physics at the University of California, San Diego, UCSD, and director of the California Space Institute, CalSpace, at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography.
This was a substantial leadership role. She was paid a solid professor's salary, plus a significant stipend, overseeing a large budget and 28 full and part-time staff.
And she successfully shifted her research focus entirely, moving away from spaceflight applications. Her research during this period focused on highly specialized areas like nonlinear optics and Thomson scattering.
Which is what, exactly?
It's highly specific research, essentially exploring how light interacts with matter at an atomic level. So moving her focus entirely away from space vehicles and toward pure fundamental physics, it shows her absolute commitment to the intellectual core of her training.
And the institutional trust in her integrity continued long after her flying days. She remained director of CalSpace until 1996 and officially retired from UCSD in 2007. But she was called back to service during another national tragedy.
In 2003, she was asked to serve on the Columbia Accident Investigation Board. This made her the only person in history to serve on the investigating panels for both the Challenger and Columbia disasters.
She truly was the go-to expert for post-tragedy analysis and integrity, the person Washington and NASA knew they could trust for an unvarnished assessment.
And despite her immense credibility and proven ability to speak truth to power, she consistently turned down offers to lead the agency itself. Both President Bill Clinton and later Lori Garver, on behalf of President Barack Obama, offered her the position of NASA administrator.
But she preferred to stay in California and focus on advisory and educational work. She served on PCST, that's the President's Committee of Advisors on Science and Technology, and the Review of United States Human Spaceflight Plans Committee. She kept advising at the highest, most influential levels, but always avoided the political top job.
A reflection probably of her distaste for the bureaucracy she had seen compromise safety.
It's clear that after stepping away from the operational and political intensity of Washington, her true, lasting passion centered on making sure the next generation, especially young girls, saw STEM careers as viable, attainable paths.
This commitment was evident in her work with NASA outreach programs starting in the mid-1990s. She spearheaded major initiatives like the ISS EarthCam and Grail MoonCam projects.
These were brilliant public engagement tools. They were designed specifically to allow upper elementary and middle school students to request actual, high-resolution images of Earth from the International Space Station and images of the Moon from the Grail satellites.
And this wasn't just passive observation. It put the power of scientific research directly into the hands of students. It gave them a tangible connection to space science. They were requesting the images, analyzing the data, and using the same tools actual scientists use. It provides a truly active aha moment.
She also jumped into publishing early, recognizing the need for relatable science communication.
Yeah.
She co-wrote the children's book, To Space and Back, with her high school friend, Sue Oki, in 1986, right after the Challenger disaster.
And after a brief stint as president of the space news website space.com around the turn of the millennium, she decided to found her own institution. She co-founded Sally Ride Science with Tam O'Shaughnessy.
This company was dedicated to creating high-quality, entertaining science programs and publications specifically focused on upper elementary and middle school students.
And the explicit targeted emphasis was on encouraging girls and minority students in STEM, filling a gap that she had personally experienced in her own career.
She and O'Shaughnessy co-wrote 6 books on space aimed at children, with accessible titles like The Mystery of Mars and Mission Planet Earth. This was more than a side hustle. It was the foundation of her post-NASA life's mission.
And this educational work was driven by a powerful personal philosophy, which she articulated clearly in her famous quote. Everywhere I go, I meet girls and boys who want to be astronauts and explore space. I want to see those same stars in their eyes in 10 years and know they are on their way.
It just underscores her commitment, not just to inspiration, but to sustained follow-through.
And now we come to the intimate part of her life. A chapter that was kept profoundly private throughout her decades of public service, only to be revealed after her death, fundamentally reshaping her identity in the history books and the public consciousness.
During her post-NASA years, especially after her divorce from Stephen Hawley, her relationship with Tam O'Shaughnessy solidified. O'Shaughnessy moved in with Ride in La Jolla, California.
They were partners for 27 years, spanning from 1985 until Ride's death in 2012. This was a long-term, committed partnership that was maintained in absolute privacy during her most public years.
The sources confirm they took a formal step by registering their domestic partnership in California on August 15, 2011, just 1 year before Ride passed away from pancreatic cancer at the age of 61.
And her obituary, which was released shortly after her death on July 23, 2012, was the vehicle for this public revelation. It publicly named Tam O'Shaughnessy as her surviving partner. This singular act made Sally Ride the first known LGBTQ astronaut.
The context here is key. Her sister, Karen Baer, confirmed that Ride made a deliberate choice to keep both her private life and her illness and treatments hidden from the public eye. This wasn't accidental privacy, it was a calculated necessity of her career.
This context truly underscores the immense pressure placed upon pioneers in the 1980s and 90s, especially women entering historically male fields. The public demanded symbols of clean, normative American progress, and Ride realized that revealing her full identity could have jeopardized her professional standing, or, worse, distracted from the mission itself.
Her privacy was a means of survival in a hostile public spotlight. But despite her desire for privacy in life, her identity is now a crucial, visible part of her enduring legacy, recognized powerfully through posthumous honors.
The honors were immense, reflecting the depth of her service. She was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2013, the highest civilian award in the U.S., which was accepted by Tam O'Shaughnessy, a very public recognition of their relationship by the highest office.
She also received major space honors that literally write her name into the cosmos. The impact site of the G-Rail lunar mission was named in her honor in 2012. In 2022, the Cygnus spacecraft for the NG-18 mission was named the SS Sally Ride.
And shifting from space to the seas, the RV Sally Ride, a naval research ship, was named after her, becoming the first vessel in the research fleet named after a female scientist. O'Shaughnessy christened the ship in 2014. These honors consistently integrate her full identity, with O'Shaughnessy playing a public central role.
Her cultural impact is just undeniable. It transcends governmental honors and moves into educational toys and memorabilia. She was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 1988 and the Astronaut Hall of Fame.
In pop culture, she was featured in the Women of NASA Lego set in 2017, celebrated with a Mattel Barbie doll in the Inspiring Women series in 2019, and honored on a U.S. first-class postage stamp in 2018.
But perhaps the most enduring and publicly visible recognition came in March 2022. She was honored as one of the first two honorees of the American Women Quarter Series, making her the first known LGBTQ person to appear on U.S. currency.
It's a stunning, full-circle moment for a person who sacrificed public visibility for professional pioneering. Her life ultimately shows us that a singular, groundbreaking achievement, being the first woman in space, was merely the launching pad for a decades-long career defined by technical rigor, crisis integrity, and a profound personal commitment to changing the world through education.
So what we've learned today really crystallizes that Sally Ride was fundamentally much more than a historical footnote. She was a highly technical physicist, a pioneer in operating the robotic arm, and an indispensable government advisor who leveraged her credibility to maintain integrity during moments of national crisis like the Challenger and Columbia disasters.
Let's distill the three crucial takeaways that define her legacy beyond the first title. First, the synergy between her elite athletic discipline and her rigorous theoretical physics training created a rare astronaut profile, a woman who handled both the intense physical scrutiny and the highest technical demands of the shuttle program with just unmatched poise.
Second, her willingness to blow the whistle discreetly during the Rogers Commission, providing that critical O-ring information while protecting herself through Richard Feynman, that demonstrates immense professional integrity in the face of deep institutional and political pressure. She prioritized truth and safety over her own career comfort.
And third, her unwavering commitment to STEM education through Sally Ride Science ensured that her mission extended far past her time in orbit. She was focused on building a pipeline for the next generation of diverse scientific leaders. She inspired, and then she built the infrastructure to support that inspiration.
Her life forces us to reflect on the immense personal toll required to be a pioneer. We noted the documentary context. During that era, people didn't like women in space, and they especially didn't like single women in space. Sally Ride's calculated privacy, the decision to hide her 27-year relationship with Tam O'Shaughnessy, was clearly a necessary strategy for her to achieve and maintain her success in a hostile public arena.
Her ability to hold two worlds separate, the highly public symbol of progress and the intensely private reality of her life, it speaks volumes about the pressures she bore alone. The choice was not about preference, but professional survival.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. Given the immense personal sacrifice often required for pioneers to break such profound barriers, what price do we collectively pay as a society when those figures feel they must hide fundamental parts of their identity just to ensure their professional success and safety?
It's a profound question that shapes not only Sally Ride's enduring legacy, but the paths of every groundbreaking figure who follows. It reminds us that the fight for acceptance often continues long after the glass ceiling has been shattered.
A truly incredible deep dive into a life defined by courage, intellect, and profound discretion. Thank you for diving deep with us.